Hello and welcome to the final session of the day, the first day of the PaTTAN Literacy Symposium. And this session, coaching components for the post-COVID era, face-to-face, flipped, or mixed. My name is Andra Bell, and I'm joined by my amazing colleague, Karen Brady. We are excited to facilitate this session for everyone. Before we start, we have a few housekeeping items to review. You can access the presenter handouts for this session, the presenter bio, and the conference schedule on the PaTTAN website, and the link is provided in the chat. Just as a reminder, this session will be recorded and is 75 minutes in length, which includes a 15-minute question and answer period. To access closed captioning, click on the icon CC Live Transcript on the Zoom control panel on your screen. If you experience technology difficulties, please go to the technical support guides area above the schedule on the symposium page. Since this is a Zoom, please keep your video feature off and stay muted to eliminate any potential distractions during the presentation portion of our session. We would love for you to tweet out or share out on social media all you are learning from the Literacy Symposium. The hashtag for the symposium is hashtag PaTTANLit2022. That is also posted in the chat for you. And now we would like to welcome you all and introduce you to Erin Hamilton, Heather Spotts, and Erin McManaman.
Thanks so much, Andra. I'm Heather Spotts. I'm joining you from the Central Intermediate Unit number 10. I'm also joined by my amazing colleagues as well. I have Erin Hamilton on the call, although it's now Dr. Erin Hamilton on the call with us. And she was previously part of the BLAST Intermediate Unit number 17. And I'll let her provide you with some more information about her new role here when it's her slides coming up here soon. And then we also have Erin McManaman from IU 11 on the call with us. And today we're going to explore some of the movements that we had made over time, especially as we had transitioned from into this post-COVID era, and what we tried and some of the things that worked well for us so that we can share those with you.
Thanks, Heather. So like Heather explained, my name is Erin Hamilton, and I recently made a shift from the Intermediate Unit 17 in Pennsylvania to working for Lexia, specifically working with our state leaders in Pennsylvania and across other parts of the Eastern domain. But what I'm here today to talk to you about is how Erin and Heather and I collaborated really as part of that enhanced core reading instruction PaTTAN literacy grant cohort. We all three had teams in different districts at the time that were going through that grant. And when we were going through all of that with them, we found that COVID happened with all of our lives. And because of that, it required us to really shift how we were doing this coaching as an external coach. So some of the things we were doing in our role specifically was we were coaching the internal coaches within school districts. We were also coaching specific teachers in classrooms. We were supporting administrators in their walkthroughs, specifically in this enhanced core reading instruction. And then ultimately our goal was to build that capacity so that we could gradually release our coaching and then have them be self-sufficient, since we were just one person in each of our intermediate units. And we had, thankfully, a lot of districts and teachers and administrators that were taking on this new expectation and responsibility. So one thing we wanted to point out on this slide as well is that we really made it a point to be collaborative between our intermediate unit training and consulting team. So as you can see, there's some pictures of us there being silly and collaborating together and having fun, but also really specifically thinking about the nuances of enhanced core reading instruction, because instead of just implementation and coaching, which we'll talk about here in a minute, it really got into the nitty-gritty of the programs that the districts were using and how we could support them with different struggles that they were having. So we'll move through that with you this afternoon as well.
But before we head into more of that nitty-gritty detail, we really kind of wanted to just frame a little bit about what coaching is and kind of that purpose and definition of what coaching is. And so we kind of looked at the work of Jan Hasbrook and Daryl Mickle and their book called Student Focused Coaching to kind of give us that framework or some key points for you to kind of look at when we're thinking about instructional coaching. What is it? What is the goal of it? And really, you know, the big aha with that kind of instructional coaching piece is it's really all about helping every teacher be successful as possible so that every student achieves success, because that's what we want to do in our classrooms. And so our role as external coaches was to help to guide and coach the internal coaches as well as the classroom teachers. And so we were really, we were through PaTTAN, and we had the PaTTAN model where everybody received professional development. And then we knew these teachers and coaches needed some coaching and assistance to help with the implementation of the enhanced core reading instruction. We kind of needed to figure out, what does coaching look like? What is it really all about? So I love that first kind of bullet point, if you will, that high quality instructional coaching provides that on-site, job embedded and sustained professional development and learning. And I love that part. It's not just professional development, somebody goes in and then somebody leaves. It's really that professional development, but that ongoing learning, that sustainability to really learn and grow. And that's what's going to really get us to what Jan Hasbrook and Daryl Mickle say. It's so we can make every teacher successful and so that every student achieves success. And so when you look at that bottom bullet point, that bottom point of SFC is student-focused coaching. When we think about what we want the model to really be, it should be cooperative. It should be very collaborative between the coach and the teachers. You really want to have that wonderful professional relationship with those colleagues. You're mutually engaged because you're focused on what it is that they're bringing to the table that they want to learn so they can maximize their skills, because the big idea is, how are we going to enhance student learning? So all of that is wonderful. I will tell you, our journey didn't start out with that wonderful idea of that student-focused coaching, because we were really initially kind of, I'm going to say, technical coaches, because as teachers are starting to learn, or anybody, whether it's you're on an athletic field and you are learning a new skill, you need that technical coaching so you can then develop that skill. And so you can become automatic, you can become accurate, so you get the results that you want. And so, if you're learning how to play tennis, I'm going to need a coach to show me how to do that forehand and backhand and how to do all the nuances of a slice or the serve or whatever it is. Our teachers needed that too. So we started out kind of in that, I'm going to say, technical coaching. So we really wanted to make sure the teachers had that skill set. So that was not always that collaborative model that we'd love to see in that bottom bullet point. So just kind of keep that in mind, because that was, some of the challenges that we had that we'll talk about later on as we move through our session. So when we think about our year, and I'm even going to say probably the past 3 years, Heather, I think you had a team maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Okay. So, we started off with a lot of the face-to-face coaching. So you had your team, you went in, you did your face-to-face. And then we had COVID hit. And so we have a flipped model. And then we moved to a mixed model. So we will go through today and talk about each of these, and then really spend some time talking about what it all looked like, what it came to be, and some resources and things that came out of all of the work from all of us during the year.
And as Erin mentioned, we started off with this face-to-face model, and that is one that I probably am most familiar with, and many of you are probably the most familiar with as far as coaching goes. And the reason we put Interstate 80 on here is because like Erin had mentioned, anytime you're starting to learn a new skill, it's really important to map it out or give a roadmap to those that you're working with and coaching. So this is just some pictures of the way that we went in with a school district and talked about how they wanted to roll out specifically these ECRI routines. Carol Disson had mentioned at the PaTTAN training with the administrators that final day, really the importance of small pieces and making sure that we get really good instructionally at specific routines and not overwhelmingly try to do them all perfectly from the beginning. So we found when we were doing the face-to-face model, it was really helpful to do bite-sized pieces, as well as knowing that our time is important and hard to find often. So we would go in with these face-to-face models and specifically target an instructional practice with ECRI, do a lot of reading from the manual, do a little bit of coaching and modeling for them, and then showing them some examples from Carol Disson or Jess Searles, and then really allowing them to practice. And we found it really important for our teachers in the classroom, as well as our administrators, to see those examples over and over and over again and feel like they were in a safe environment and comfortable environment to ask questions about those practices and really understand the why behind them. Like Erin said, it really was not meant to be a sit and get one session every Monday or something where they're coming and sitting and listening and then not using it. We really wanted it to be that application in the classroom. So the roadmap was really important, to sit down with a calendar and talk about when we were going to roll all of those out and have that practice in between. Sometimes when we were talking about that practice in between, because I had mentioned earlier, most intermediate units or those coaches that are supporting these grants through PaTTAN, we have, one consultant to a district of many teachers, or even many administrators trying to roll this out. So we found some things like using a Google Doc to help schedule some times with start and end times and the teacher's name and where we could find them. And then specifically, what parts of their lesson did they want us to really focus on? Because thinking about the administrators walking through, it was oftentimes overwhelming for them as well to think about the entire ECRI lesson of 20 minutes per se, if we could focus specifically on a part of the lesson. And then did they want us as the intermediate unit consultant to really be modeling that, or were we doing more of a coaching, or was this the afterwards debriefing session where sometimes it was as easy as writing some feedback on a sticky note and leaving it on their desk when we walked out of the room, because that's where our time allowed. Other times we would record ourselves with a little message and email it to the teacher or the administrator with some feedback that we found. Oftentimes you'll see at the bottom there just a snippet of one of the routines. Oftentimes when I would go in, I would just make some little notes on here, flip it over to the back and write some glows, some things that I thought were really awesome, and then leave them with one, at least one grow, things to work on. And then I always said, feel free to reach out if you want some models, if I can send you some videos, because we know there's some really great examples out there of teachers doing these routines really well. So this was one way we were able to give them that feedback and start that scheduling when we were face-to-face.
And with that face-to-face model, and especially as our teams grew and more people heard about ECRI and wanted to try this, they were invited into the grants as well. We were, of course, trying to still sustain what we had already helped the schools to develop, but then we also had all of these new schools as well, or new teachers who were involved. And what we started to notice is that over time, there were similarities in the questions that were being asked. And so having to recreate the wheel every single time, here's another video of the exact same thing every single time, was getting time consuming to be able to do that individually for every single teacher. And so one of the things that had helped us was to be able to kind of flip this, to be able to take it in those bite-sized chunks, to be able to look at it in more detail and to help support the teachers from afar. And then that way we could guide them in what this might look like within their classrooms. And so one of the things that we did was develop a homework sheet, so to speak, where we could narrow it down and say, okay, if we just want to focus on just this one little routine, where do we go as the resources that are already part of, built in through the University of Oregon in our case, as well as perhaps some videos that you could watch to be able to see what this could look like in your classroom. And we had done this locally, but then we were also invited to do this at a state level as well. And so this is where officially Erin McManaman and Erin Hamilton and myself came together to say, how do we create this on a much broader scale outside of just our schools and our districts? And so what you're seeing here is what we had developed, these PLCs, were really for people across the state to be able to help them to narrow down on a little chunk of something that you could dive into, really get to know intimately, and then go back out and practice that. And with that, we had also developed some PLCs in a package. And really this came out of necessity over time, just again, simply because there are so many schools and you're limited for time capacity. And so we had developed these little PLCs in a package is what we affectionately called them, so that teachers could go directly to this as a source and be able to break this down into a read about it, watch about it, and now go do it. And so those videos were created within about a 30-minute chunk, and we had replicated that localized version at the state level with the three of us doing that live once a month so that we could support more globally the coaches across the state.
And if I could just mention right here, Heather, quickly, is this was also really nice to be able to go back with administrators that were doing walkthroughs, because they could practice with the coaching checklist by watching the model videos. And so they got a really great view of what the practice was intended to look like. And they were able to practice with that coaching checklist with a consultant. And then they were able to go in and see it live, because live, the lesson goes so quick and there's a lot to watch and see. So being able to have this at their fingertips to practice was really helpful as well.
For sure. And this is where it kind of started to get muddy, because we of course had COVID. We had an increase in the number of teams that we were supporting, and we recognized that we couldn't always do the face-to-face, but that's really where we wanted to have most of our time spent. And so we created this mixed model of sorts where we were combining these PLCs in a package with being able to go in later into the classrooms where teachers could figure out, do you want us to coach? Do you want us to co-teach, or do you want us to model something for you? And it became a blend of the two. And we're calling this that mixed model in order to, again, help the teachers from both afar and that in-person support.
So I mentioned in the beginning about the coaching piece and how our dream would be truly to be at that student-focused coaching where it was truly collaborative and, you know, just the beautiful world of they love to see the coach and they're welcomed in. But I said, it really wasn't like that to start. So you can see that we had to do some problem solving. And we kind of really, I will say that our coaching collaborative amongst ourselves was really, really helpful, and in some problem solving and thinking through, you know, we've got some stress bands here because teachers were very stressed. It was a hard year, I think, across the country in education. We had COVID, we still had COVID, you were in school, you were out of school. A lot of our districts who were in the PaTTAN cohort learning these, we didn't really go into detail for you about what ECRI is, the Enhanced Core Reading Instruction, but it is a set of very explicit routines that the teachers were learning to enhance their instruction. So on top of that, many of the teachers were also learning a new core curriculum. So they had a lot on their plate. And then all of a sudden, here comes this person who's going to come into your room to watch what you're doing. And it was stressful. It was stressful for them. It was added a level of stress, I think, for everybody, because we really wanted to create a sense of trust, a sense of that collaborativeness, and to really help help them learn the skills and be very comfortable with it, but then move past that technical piece and really get to that collaborative model, because every single teacher's goal is to have their students succeed. There's not one person teaching that's not their goal, but we knew they needed some coaching along the way. So some of the things that we did to really help foster those relationships was, addition to the Heather and Aaron mentioned the scheduling, and really have them maybe pinpoint maybe one thing they wanted us to kind of focus on. So they didn't have to worry about everything, but they needed to trust us, and they needed to trust that we were truly with them and on their side, because we were also in the position of learning the routines and nuancing that work ourselves. So we really wanted them to know we're team players with you. So some things that we did to help with that was every time we went in, and Aaron mentioned, we gave a lot of positive glows, because every single teacher did a lot of things that were wonderful. So we really wanted them to know all the great things they were doing. And then we maybe pulled out just like one thing that would help move them forward. And it was there that either we maybe left them a little thank you note, and actually maybe like that, left them a thank you note, wrote a little note in there about thank you for allowing us into your space, because they may not have wanted us in there, but here we were, because they were part of the grant, or their administrator wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable with the routines, whatever the reason, we were in there, or their internal coach was in there. So just doing something like that, recognizing all the work that they have done this year and all the work they did already to learn these routines, was kind of a game changer for all of us. So just that little bit of time, which I know I tried to schedule in after I would go into a lesson, I would try to see if I could schedule a little bit of time so I could write that note, because once I saw a bunch of lessons, you might forget, get some of the detail. So those were some things we did. The other thing is, we didn't do it all the time. I might do that the first time. The next time I might go in and I might leave them a sticky note, or we have a conversation. And then another time I might just take an index card, write a little note, and maybe put a little Hershey kiss or something. Again, just acknowledging everything that they're doing so well, all of the hard work they're doing, and to really build up that relationship and that trust, so they knew we were with them and we were on their side. We just felt that just those things helped to shift us from that technical coaching piece to now we're getting to be more collaborative, because then they would see us in the hallway and say, oh, wait, can you come and help us with this? Or, hey, how do you do this word? So all of a sudden we shifted from that person coming in to now they're seeing us as a resource, and we are on the same playing field. So that was, I think, something that we really helped to kind of change that climate and move forward from that technical coaching piece. Sometimes we would ask the teachers to, dare I say, record themselves. And so, nobody likes to be videotaped. But I know, we all know how powerful that reflection is if you dare to record your lesson and then go back and watch it. So a lot of people were fearful of it. They were fearful of us coming in. They were fearful of recording, but we helped to kind of get over that hump by saying, hey, record me. We can use that to go back and watch it together. So you can see, what did I do well? Maybe I forgot something, or my timing was off. So that was helpful to maybe kind of reduce that fear factor. And again, really setting up that trust and building the relationship, and then having, teachers talk about, hey, it was really okay. They were fine coming in, was helpful. And the
And
other,
Erin, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to say, a group of teachers that I was working with did what Erin just mentioned, and they actually asked, they brought the idea to me. They all had an iPad that was theirs from the school. And so they asked me, will you just record using my device and then leave it here? So that was really awesome because they were self-reflecting on their own practice. But then I also saw this organic collaboration happen where they would take their iPad to the Title I reading specialist and say, can you watch this and give me some feedback? So now if Erin or Heather and I weren't there to give them, day-to-day support because we were in a lot of districts supporting a lot of initiatives, they were going to each other and asking for that help and that support. So that again, just builds on that capacity. It allows them, yeah, sure, they did, a lot of them started with this resistance or the fear or the worry, but it really organically grew to a climate. Erin, I think you said that really nicely. They grew into a climate that they felt supportive, and they not only saw student success, but they really saw their practice grow, and them grow as leaders too.
and it really helps to break down that door, that it's not just my room, we're all in it together. And then sometimes, as we're learning something new, we think we're doing it all right, and maybe we're not, we're missing something. And so watching each other, then they can say, even the same grade level, they were like, oh, wait a minute, I was doing it this way, or I was doing it that way. So Erin, I love that that collaborativeness then amongst themselves, because that's really where we want it to be. We want them to be collaborating together and learning and growing together. And that changed from that initial technical kind of model. So, so some of the things that we noticed when we were going out and supporting our teachers in the district was, we recognized that initially when through the PaTTAN cohort, teachers had like a week long of professional development. It was either in this past year, it was in June or in August. Some previously it had been during the school year. So you had kind of that initial boost of learning about the science of reading, and then learning the explicit routines and having that practice time. But you get to school and you start going, and there is so much to learn and so much to wrap their heads around that that we noticed that maybe adding or offering some resource supports might be helpful or might be needed. So some of the things that we started to recognize was in one of the routines, there is an irregular word reading routine. And so in the initial instruction of some of the words, there's a particular routine to introduce irregular words. And I know across the board, that routine was not always consistently being done as that introduction to words. And so as a collaboration between Erin and myself and Heather and Lauren Smith and Mary Lou Heron and other IU consultants, we recognized that it was probably because there was nothing kind of organized for the teachers on what words should I be explicitly teaching using this introductory routine. So as a group, we got together and we created the word lists from their core program, and kind of by what unit it was, by week it was, and what day it was. So they at least had an idea of what words they might want to introduce a little more explicitly using the introductory routine. It wasn't you had to do it, but it was a guideline for them. And it was really kind of fun when I went into one of the teachers' classrooms, there it was. So she had put it in her overhead projector sheets and then had it there and then was using it. And then the second grade teacher said, oh yeah, where is that? So she remembered she had it and was going to get it. So again, every teacher wants to do their best, but sometimes it was a little overwhelming. So we were trying to scaffold some of those supports for them to make it a little bit easier so they would get it into practice. Another thing was just using the affix cards. So again, you can see up here in this picture, you can see there are some ports along the wall. So the teacher had the prefixes and suffixes, the affix cards up here after they were introduced. But sometimes then they didn't have them for them to be able to use when they were introducing those affixes and then having them for practice. So so that may be something we may have made. I know I made some for the teachers if need be. Sometimes teachers were then, and now I feel like we were moving into that more student-focused coaching where we were really collaborating, and they were starting to say, hey, you know what, I need to do maybe some additional assessments. I'm worried about this student. And so maybe they wanted to try an assessment they didn't have available. So they may have borrowed it and we supported them in administering it and looking at the results of those assessments. So those were just two examples that some of the teachers borrowed. Another, I think this was a really useful tool for me to share with the teachers, were these in the ECRI routines, you have multi-syllable word routines. And so sometimes you have to cover up part of the word. So the part of the syllables. And so even though in our initial training or their initial training, we learned about these little trick, a little card or something to cover up the words, but that was like a detail that was not always picked up by everybody. So when we go into support and I would maybe observe that that was not part of being used as part of the routine, I thought I'm going to make some. And if I'm seeing that, or if I'm in like a first grade or a second grade classroom and they're using that routine and they don't have it, I'm going to give them one. And so so I created a bunch and I just kind of had those with me and would deliver those out. I think that could actually be a great make it take it for the beginning of the year for teachers at a PD day, because they're not hard, but just takes that little bit of time. But again, it was that little bit of, they just didn't get it. It was off their radar. And so I thought that's one thing we could do across the board that might support them, and then get that routine in place and become more accurate and more fluent with it. And one more thing, we could see that shift from that technical coaching to really that collaborative was when some of the teachers in the building started to say, you know what, I know we learned about sound walls. I've heard all of you talking about sound walls. I need help doing one. And so providing that professional development and learning, and that was at their request to help put up a sound wall, but not just put it up, then how do we use it? So we really talked and mapped out, how are we going to use it? How are you using it instructionally in the classroom? And that's when we knew we made a shift. We shifted from here they come to yay, here they come. Hey, I need you. Can you help me with this? And then it was like, Yahoo. So one more thing I have up here is we have a shared drive. So I know within different, we have a shared drive amongst us as external coaches. We have a shared drive maybe with internal coaches or maybe at the district level for work. But I know that that one of my districts who was no longer in the cohort last year, we had a shared drive and they continued to upload videos. They were recording themselves, putting it in the shared drive for, as Erin had mentioned, that peer-to-peer kind of implementation. And so I think that is just wonderful. So that's a resource for them at their district level. We are also kind of expanding that idea of that shared drive across, not just at the district level or at the IU level, but across the state for some routines that are all teachers, if they're using a core program, might be using these routines and need some support. So rather than having everybody make up vocabulary PowerPoints, we are looking at how to expand that and kind of share the wealth, share the love of putting those PowerPoints together. So again, I think, you know, that collaboration, that work together makes the lift a lot lighter and makes it a lot more fun as we journey through as coaches and as teachers. So Heather's going to talk a little bit about the power of video.
Yeah, so those changes, those shifts that Erin's talking about, they didn't happen overnight, right? And so we had tried to meet the teachers where they were in so many different layers of this. And one of those was in their knowledge of or interest in learning about different tools that we could utilize to record them in their teaching practices. And so one that was recommended to us was SibMe. You see it listed there. We put these little screenshots there so that you could see what these look like as you go out and do a little Google search for them. And that one didn't fit for us, but one of the key factors of SibMe is that you can do time-stamped responses within the video. So if you want to say, pause the video and say it at 2 minutes and 27 seconds, I want to put a little note here to the teacher, you can do that before you send it back to them. We also tried Flipgrid, which was a great tool to be able to, you didn't have to send it anywhere, it just existed. The hard part about that one was the making sure that the teacher knew that I had just sent feedback to that person, or that the new video had been uploaded for me to see. And so that was just something to consider as you're navigating through these options. Zoom worked really well for many of us, simply because all you had to do then was, after it was recorded, just send the share link and it's good to go. And so that allowed us to be able to just drop in a Zoom link into the email that we were sending back to the teacher. So a quick thank you, and then boom, here's my little Zoom video for you. And then having all those links stored within the Google Drive were so helpful for us to share with each other, but then for teachers to share with other teachers within a building, and also for us sometimes to be able to share across the different IUs or the different districts. And so as we were looking at these videos, one of the things that helped us was the use of a rubric. And so over there on the left-hand side, you see an example of one that comes from University of Oregon to help guide us in what we were looking for those subtle details that can make a big difference in the instructional practice and the students' reception of those instructional practices within a classroom. Now, I know we're looking at ECRI here because for us, this is what, this was what we were supporting. However, I also want you to think about this in terms of more broadly, that even if your school isn't using ECRI and you're thinking about this in terms of whatever it is for your structured supports that you're providing for coaching efforts, using some kind of a guided tool for you to be consistent on those big look for ideas. And Erin Hamilton's going to be talking about what that looks like in terms of walkthroughs here in a little bit. But it really helped our teachers, again, to see what was going on within their own practice, but then us to be able to help support them too.
And Heather,
another thing that we did.
Heather,
sorry, Erin, go ahead.
Before you go, I also, I think you briefly mentioned that idea of us maybe sending something to them, but that was one, Erin, we kind of mentioned a couple of different ways of us giving feedback. And so, we gave feedback verbally, we talked to the teacher, if we were on site, we could do a quick talk, or maybe write a note, or of course our little thank you note. Oops, you couldn't really see that, a thank you note. But another way to make it a little more personal, or be able to give more details or more explicit details without writing a dissertation, was for us to use Zoom or record ourselves giving feedback. And the teachers, I didn't do it. I don't think we did it. We didn't do it all the time, but if a teacher recorded a lesson and asked any of us to view it and give feedback, sometimes I felt like I wanted to really give them some really good feedback, and doing a Zoom back, a recording back, I thought was more personal, and I could get into just more explicit, glows, what they did so well, and then maybe that one takeaway point, and just made it more personal. And we did find that that was very powerful, and the teachers really did like that. And I think they respected that since they recorded, then we recorded back. So I know moving forward, I will do that more frequently. And personally, I thought it was easier than me sitting down and writing it. I liked being able to just talk to them, even though they weren't there. So just power of video from the teacher perspective of recording, being reflective, having us or their internal coach or their peer give feedback, but also giving our feedback via Zoom, I thought was very, very powerful. So thank you.
Yeah. Beautiful transition there, Erin, because what happened then was we love the power of doing this at an individual level because it is much more personal. And so you might have the opportunity of time to be able to provide those to your teachers. If you do, we found that to be the most meaningful for our teachers because it had that little personalized effect to it. And what also happened in terms of for us, there's that time factor, and the beauty of ECRI routines was that as more people learned about them and tried them in their classrooms and saw the results, they shared it with other people. So this kept happening again and again and again, and it seemed to multiply over time here, over the last couple of years, so that we have more than half of the districts in our IU that are now doing this, which is fantastic. And when we think about just how many teachers that is to send individual little videos to, that's a lot of little videos. And so this is where the 10-minute takeaways then came into play, which to provide that support, instead of, I found myself making video after video of reminders of card, sound, spelling, as I was pulling up these little cards. In that last video there, you see me holding up a picture of a sound spelling card with a picture of a mouse. And part of the routine is just do card, sound, spelling as we're tapping down through it, right? Again, specific to ECRI, but the whole idea is that I found myself making the same video over and over again. And then that's when I thought, wait a minute, what if I had a collection or a warehouse of videos to support these different specific aspects of the ECRI routines that I could simply have as a little library source to be able to pass out to people. So you might find that same thing where you have something that is maybe copyrighted, or maybe there aren't videos that are already created in terms of support videos with whatever it is that you're helping to roll out and coach and support your teachers with. In that way, having a little collection of videos private on YouTube could be a way to generate that support across a multitude of teachers in a variety of different areas. And then over to the right there, you just see that there's a screenshot of me doing one of those videos simply because we knew that we needed some quality videos that were showing some modeling, but we were also creating some that were some non-examples too, because it's really helpful to see maybe a not quite so perfect lesson so that it gives everybody else an idea of, what are those little nuances that we should be looking for and how do those make an impact within a lesson? So that was just an example of one that we had created. And as this grew and spread, they were beautiful wildflowers that were growing all across our schools. And then what we noticed is that just in the same way that we found benefit in connecting with one another, networking across the IUs, our teachers desired that too. And so within our Monday morning meetings, simply because I needed a catchy phrase and it was happening on Mondays, Erin McManaman called hers Wondering Wednesdays, but it was a time for us to come together and support each other, celebrate those things that are going well, and also to help problem solve around the things that maybe aren't going well, right? You have challenges and we want to help you overcome them. So here's just a screenshot of an agenda. These were really, really loose. We're not talking, a lot of structure in these. It was very, very open. with what the teachers wanted to talk about, because we wanted it to be meaningful for them. And Erin McManaman, you also had some great feedback. We all did from our teachers, but you had gathered a couple of quotes specifically from some of the teachers in your area. I don't know if you wanted to share those, how many of those you wanted to share. I wanted to switch that over to you. There we go. If we want to just give them time to read that, or you want to select a couple to read out, but I'm going to transition over to you next.
Sure, but you know what, before I even do that, I think one of the benefits also, Heather, of the coaches meeting was so we were the external coaches, and then within the each building or part of the cohort, there was an internal coach, and often that internal coach was a Title I teacher. That seemed to be, at least in my building, that role kind of fell to them. So all of a sudden, they were now in a coaching role that was really not part of what they signed up to do initially. They didn't know how to be a coach, and they're on the same playing field with everybody else. So, we were helping each other. And then we had our little Monday morning meetings, or I called it Wondering Wednesday, trying to be cute, like Heather. But it also, what that did for us is give us a window into what other professional development and learning the coaches were looking at, maybe building wide or grade level wide. So that gave us that window into, okay, what is it that we need to be prepared for when we're going on site, or if we're doing a flipped model, or so I think that was really, really, really helpful. And so these were just some of the kind of feedback that we got from the coaching from over the year. And so you can kind of, read a few of those, but, the first one, thank you for the gift card and note. I did actually have some little $5 gift cards that I had purchased for some prizes for a training. And I thought, these teachers just needed that boost. So if they were willing initially for me to go into their classroom, that was something that I did. I wrote a nice note, and you can just see that it wasn't even the gift card. It was the fact that we acknowledged how hard they've worked and that we were appreciating it. And again, it was really to kind of move past that technical model that we were in to really become collaborative and working all together. And so then you can go down and look and say, you know what, sometimes we were looking at what did the routine look like, but we might look bigger and think, there are some classroom management that might be beneficial, some routines that might be beneficial. And so when we talked about it, they're like, oh, again, it was a shift to, oh, please come in, I need your help. Where the first time we were in there, I was in there, it was, the teacher was very nervous, and I was kind of not that guest that was, joyful. She was not joyful to see me. And then it shifted. So again, building that climate, you can see where I think the tides changed, and that they knew that we were all supportive and really just wanted to be there to help. So you can kind of read a few of those that, they enjoyed the fact that we made a video for them. They recorded, so we recorded. And again, everybody worked really hard, and we all know that we needed to build them up and keep them moving forward. And so that really kind of shifts us to now we've done all that at that administrative level. What do their walkthroughs look like? So Erin's going to talk a little bit about that.
Well, I noticed in the chat, someone had said, change in outcomes really, drives changes in beliefs. And I think one thing that we've seen in this model, whether it was face-to-face or flipped or mixed, however it might have been, was really this change in practice, not only from the teachers, not only from the coaches, but also from the administrative level, and really focusing on that literacy leadership and how important that is for student success. And so one thing that we were able to do in this situation with these ECRI routines is really give a lot of support to the administrators that were supporting these teachers every single day, boots on the ground, right? So this is just an example of a screenshot that ECRI provides for anyone going in to do a walkthrough that really gives them all of the components of what that instructional routine should look like. And if there's an error done by the student, it's expected to have immediate error correction. And then there's specific things that you do to move forward with that routine. It's very explicit. So this was a nice tool for administrators to use and be focused specifically on one routine at a time. And as they got more proficient with those observations, they're able to do more than one routine at a time. So it was really nice for us to be able to support teachers and support coaches, but also support administrators, because when Erin, Heather, myself, and anyone else across this PaTTAN grant were not able to be there day in and day out, they're still looking for support as that literacy leadership. So we thought it was important to mention that, really changing those beliefs. And like Erin and Heather both mentioned, it wasn't only ECRI that might have been the driving force for this amazing change that we saw with these teachers and their practices and their student outcomes, but ultimately it kept the ball rolling on their practices and their literacy block all the way through, from the implementation of those sound spelling walls to talking about their vocabulary instruction, all of the pieces and all of the components of their instruction throughout that literacy block. So we didn't want to forget about the administrators that also saw a lot of benefit through this as well. I'll leave it to Heather for some takeaways then.
So I hope you're seeing through this that the ECRI routines for us, that was the do. That was what we were putting into place for the practice. That's what invites us to change the practice. But it's really more about the coaching and the networking, that professional learning and professional development that really helps to put that practice into play, right? So the ECRI was what the teachers were putting into practice. And then it was everything else that was supporting that and making that happen. Otherwise, this could have all been for naught, right? But what we came to learn about this was that there's really not a one size fits all with this. We couldn't pigeonhole ourselves into, oh, okay, we're going to do this face-to-face coaching, or, this is the by the textbook way of doing things. Especially with COVID, it invited us to make changes, to try things, to rely on one another, to say, well, I did it this way and it worked for me. You might want to give it a shot as well. And being willing to be vulnerable for our own selves too, as we're sharing what worked well for us and when we're experiencing challenges as well. And when we look about that in terms of the paralleling that with teachers' practices, I often say to teachers, what better way to show the students that we're the lead learners of the classroom than by trying these things out, right? To say, hey, I'm learning too, here I am as an adult and I'm learning. I think that provides that same parallel of support for the teachers who are in the classrooms doing this too, is that we're willing to try these things, to elicit the feedback from other people, to make the changes in order to hopefully best support them within their practices. So we really had to think about how can we be flexible, and that each situation was a little bit different, to be able to be willing to change it in order to incorporate the needs of that particular teacher or those teachers within a school system. And that coaching part here, while it's great that it's coming from or with us, that we really want to be able to say, okay, when we scaffold this away, who's left within the building? We can't be there every single day, right? PaTTAN can't be in there every single day. And so PaTTAN has kind of placed this within our hands. And then eventually here we're putting this into the hands of the schools so that they're supporting one another, that peer-to-peer, so that they're going to go ahead and look at their own practices, that they've sustained this opportunity to look at videos, to reflect, to share out with one another, that we're never done with this. We're going to continue to improve in small areas of our own classroom practice. And then hopefully it's going to invite us to not only do that within our own classroom, but maybe with the teacher next door that we're comfortable with, or maybe our group of grade level teachers, or maybe across our school, so that it's not just my kids, it's our kids. And how can we help all of our kids in being successful within the literacy environments?
And I think
Aaron.
I was just going to mimic that. I think that that need for instructional change and that drive for a change in practice was really contagious amongst all of the teachers and administrators that we saw trying this and being vulnerable and being able to open their classroom doors. You know, they're the ones that were really doing amazing things for students, and we saw some amazing outcomes for our students to move forward, even in the height of everything that was going on around them. I did notice that in the chat, there is a link to University of Oregon and some information regarding ECRI practices. So if you're looking for more information, there is some information there. And Andra also just put in the chat that we will be sharing this presentation. So she will be putting that on the Literacy Symposium in the next few days on that site for you. So you'll have access to that.
And while there isn't necessarily a grant coming through PaTTAN next year that is specific to the supports of the ECRI routines, they still exist. They're out there. They're at the University of Oregon's website. You can take a look at them within their website. But then if you're within Pennsylvania, we also encourage you to reach out to your IU consultant so that you can gather more information, maybe try it out within your own classroom or within your own school. We highly encourage you to do that, because this is one of those biggest bang for our bucks that we've seen in a very long time when it comes to Tier 1 supporting all of our students, and then what that looks like as the alignment of those tiers throughout the entire system. So highly encourage you to check that out in more detail.
Heather, I think that's a really important thing to mention, is that the specific routines we were talking about guiding our coaching for this session is really specific to all students. It was not a targeted intervention specifically. It was enhancing your core reading. This tree at the end of our slide here with our contact information on it is a example of what that foundational skill lesson looks like that enhances your core reading instruction. So just an example of some of the skills that these instructional routines overlap onto. I think that we are open for questions if anyone has any. I didn't see any in the chat specifically, but feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat there. And you can see Heather, Aaron, and myself, all of our contact information is there for you on this final slide.